is Viene Bilodeau, born in June 20th, 1972, from originally Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. Growing up, I was a tomboy for sure, and we had a lot of hand-me-downs from cousins and stuff, so I'd always wear my brother's clothes. I guess I would pretend I was a boy, and I would just like pass myself as a boy. I guess my parents sort of said, okay, yeah, we're not going to get you in any dresses, are we? So they kind of just let me be. So I came out to them of gay, like when I was about 13. And they kind of just accepted it. They said, oh, well, you're just going through a phase. They're quite Catholic and stuff. I grew up most of my life knowing that I was adopted. It was only about 6-7 years ago that I found out my adoption was illegal. The 60s scoop refers to a time in kind of this period where Indigenous children were taken away from their birth parents forcibly, literally scooped out of their parents' hands. And this happened over 60, 70 years, perhaps longer. In some ways, it's still going on, but rebranded. But I was very entrenched in what I heard about Native people growing up, and it wasn't very positive. I'm only getting to know my community, which is the English word is Cross Lake. Only when over the years I got to know my birth mother. Her name is Betty Ross. We had my first conversation about my roots, and I always felt other. And I was asking her, well, I don't really feel like a woman, and I don't really feel like a guy, although I'm mask presenting. She said to me, well, yeah, it's called being two-spirit. Two-spirit is a term used by a lot of Indigenous cultures. I can't say for all Indigenous cultures, but it's a term that came up in an Indigenous conference in Winnipeg in the 90s, where people gathered and they were talking about multiple genders, and the word two-spirit was framed. The overriding theme is that, yeah, two-spirit people, the healers, medicine people, people who can make decisions for the tribe. So I think that's quite interesting, because I grew up from a young age, sort of like having really strong empathy, just being really empathetic, and I think just being connected with the spiritual world. And for me, not seeing ghosts or anything like that, but just sort of reading people. We've always had these cultures to the point where when they came and seen our ceremonies, it scared them so much that they literally threw two-spirit people into the fire to kill them. Yeah, so, and their whole thing about colonizing is to erase that culture. And they gave us the Bible, and they took the land. And but now we're rising up against that, and this, I think, celebrating our culture. We still have a long way to go. My very first sweat lodge ceremony, there's an elder who kind of conducts the ceremony. He's the person who runs the ceremony, and people are in there. And I didn't have an Indigenous name, so I asked what my Indigenous name would be. Oh, I can see. He was trying to come up with a name for me. He said, I can see two people, an older man and an older woman. They're married. One's mischievous, and one's very good-hearted and good-natured. And they live within me. I'm like, oh, that sounds like me. I'm also a Gemini too, so for me, that was like, oh, an awakening. It must have been about 95, a few years ago. Betty was like, well, we should do a ceremony for you. It was about a two-spirit ceremony, which is quite ancient. It welcomed me back into the clan, the tribe. And in that ceremony, they said, don't be afraid, don't be scared. You're going to hear things. You might see things, but just realize these are your ancestors. So we sung a lot of songs. I didn't know a lot of the words. It was in Cree, ancient Cree. They welcomed our ancestors into the room. I was feeling really heavy, I guess, because probably about 12 years ago, I had a partner who committed suicide, and I could just feel her energy around me sometimes, which is another facet of being two-spirit. I guess you kind of clued in with that side of life, whether you like it or not. So yeah, her spirit entered the room, and we pushed her to the other side of it, I guess. And from that ceremony onwards, I don't feel her energy around me anymore, which is amazing. So I think for me, for reclaiming my culture, it's not something that you just take a course and you read a book and you think, oh, I'm Indigenous. These are my people. I think it's a lifelong learning. But I found that in queer culture in UK, some people adopted it, the word term two spirit, which I was like, well, that's funny. I don't think you're Indigenous, are you? Yeah. Some people haven't even been to North America. So I think for a while the word two spirit was a bit trendy. For lack of a better word, for the word genderqueer, for lack of a better word, we use non-binary because two spirit didn't exist here on paperwork. Definitely not on human resource paperwork. Two spirit would not come up when you're at work and you have to fill in forms. I've always put other, and I've always put two spirit or genderqueer back in before I knew about the term. To be able to live how you want to live and to be present how to the world how you want to present is, an activism. Everyday activism is being looking other and looking and just being comfortable in your own skin and being visible in places where people don't think queerness should exist. So I think that's quite important, visibility.